This is the tale of the endless tunnel. So, a few years back, I was still living in my hometown, and I was out with the boys. I had had a rough time recently, and they offered, you know what, Vox, mate, let's take you for camp out. And I thought, well, that sounds like a fantastic idea. So we go to this rugby field, and I was a little nervous. I'd never been for a camp out on a privately owned lot before, but we showed up, and the guy who owned the rugby lot was there, and he said basically, and I thought like he was going to kick us out, but he said, oh, you boys going for camp out? Oh, that'd be great. And so we brought our tents and stuff, and we went and set up. And as we were setting up there, he said, now, boys, if you get bored in the middle of the night, there's something to go and check out. A couple fields over, there is an abandoned World War II era storage tunnel. And it used to be used to store ammunition and weapons during the war. And so we thought, well, it might be worth checking out. And so I was there with Stumpy, as I've mentioned, the guy with the small hands. I was there with a guy who doesn't have a nickname, so I'll just call him John, which isn't his real name. We had Woggle, who is another mate of mine who's very sensitive and quite a small man. A bit of a he's grown up now. He's a bit of a sashed now. And we had one other person. I can't remember, but essentially the important part is my friends and I decided, all right, we're gonna go check this out. We turned to Woggle and we asked, do you want to come with us? And he says, no, I'm gonna keep watch. And so he stays by the campfire.
Smart.
And me, Stumpy, and John, we all walk through these fields, and it's quite a walk. In the dead of night, with our phone flashlights, we start walking, and there are cows out there, and one of them jump scared me. One of them went like, moo, like, and it scared the shit out of me while I was walking. But we kept walking. We got quite lost after a while, and we were just listening to some music on someone's phone. And eventually, we found it. We clambered up some sort of broken down, like crumbly rocks. We started climbing towards the entrance, and the entrance was this railway track that went down into the earth with big holes in those wooden slats, you know, that make up a railway track. So we kind of had to hop from plank to plank, just hump.
That's like the biggest
red
flag I've ever heard in my life.
And we went down there, and they creaked. We went every time we stepped on them, and we went down, and the railway tracks bent around to the left, and they went deep down into the earth. And so we decided, fuck it, we're gonna go see what's at the other side of this thing. And so we start walking. And bearing in mind, obviously there is no light down here, so we've got our phone flashlights, and that's it. Our phones run out of battery, we're fucked. And so we just start walking. The railway track sort of funnels into a very small track, almost like it would have been a minecart or something, probably used to transport things from one end of the tunnel to the other. And we start walking down, and there are graffiti all over the walls, you know, stuff like hearts with initials on them, you know, A+B and all that. And so we thought, you know, this must be a bit of a hangout spot for some people. And we kept walking, and we kept walking, and walking, and walking, and walking, and walking, and walking, and we had been in this tunnel for an hour, and we were no closer to the end. And of course, this underground tunnel has obviously we're underground by this point, and it's a deep downward incline. We are going deeper and deeper into the earth as we walk. And of course, by that point, phones have no signal. There's no way that we can check our map to see how far away we are from the campsite. And what we notice now is that the graffiti is not quite as innocent as it used to be. Graffiti has started becoming threatening. We have just random words, just like like a load of rubbish, just describing violent acts, describing just really gross sexual acts and stuff. Just teenagers who might have written something to try and get a scare out of somebody. And we kept walking, and we were like, man, you know, this is kind of fucked up. And by this point, all three of us had all considered going back, but we thought, like, no, we must be near the end now.
Could you see the entrance?
Yeah.
No. All we had was our phone flashlights, and it had curved downwards and sort of curved a bit enough that the entrance was far enough away that we couldn't see it. It's a very narrow tunnel as well. Very, very narrow.
Oh, so God, I got shivers.
We couldn't see the exit or the entrance. It was just what we could see with our phone flashlights. A few little dank puddles on the ground from dripping from the ceiling. And we kept walking, and then eventually we start seeing the kind of shit that you'd expect to see once you get deep enough. There were all sorts of, there were drawings of crucifixes, and there were pentagrams on the wall. There was the number of the beast, there was 666, and eventually we came to a point where instead of being square in shape, suddenly the corners filled in and it became like a pipe, like a circle.
Oh.
And someone had completely sketched the sides of those, sort of where it smoothed out into a circle, they'd painted it black. And right next to it, it said, on the wall, point of no return.
I would have turned.
I would not have even started that journey, bro.
And that's 100% real.
Did you like turn around?
We considered it, but then we decided that we have to be close now. It's the first
change.
It was the first change in anything that we'd seen in such a long time. We were mortified, but we thought we needed to try and find something, right? And so we kept walking.
No!
And something, I couldn't tell you what it was, but something about the material that pipe section was made out of. It was a really unsure footing, like we had to sort of, and it felt narrower as well, so we had to kind of like slowly sort of shimmy our way through stuff like that. Instead of just walking freely, we sort of shimmied our way through. And our phones were running low by this point as well. And like I was saying, something about the material that this tunnel was made out of, the pipe section, it seemed like it swallowed light a little bit more than before. And so it felt like we really... not quite, but to the point where it felt like our phone flashlights weren't working nearly as well as they had been.
Oh, fuck.
And now the next part is really scary.
Oh, I hate how you're like telling the story so well, because I'm actually so invested. I'm so scared. Like
this is the part where we decided to turn back.
Oh,
so we were walking down, and we were sort of thinking, who wrote all of that shit on the walls? Because the graffiti had kind of stopped at this point. Like on the pipe side, everyone had sort of like, there really wasn't much of anything. There were a few scratches on the walls, but no real paint or anything. And then suddenly, right in the distance, like very faintly, we sort of started hearing a little tapping. It was like, it sounded like footsteps. And we froze. And then from in the darkness, far, far away, where our phone flashlights genuinely couldn't reach, echoing off the walls of the cavern, we heard a noise that sounded like someone going,
no!
And we turned around and we legged it the fuck out of there. And I'm not kidding you, I genuinely think there was like just some crazy person lurking in that tunnel who had been there all night. Perhaps that was where he lived. Perhaps we were almost to the end and he was sitting around the other side, but he heard us coming. He heard us with our phone flashlights chatting and stuff. We walked into his territory and he screamed at the top of his lungs to get us out of there. Whether it was a guy who lived there, whether it was a spirit or a troll or whatever the fuck it was living down there, something roared at us and we turned around and we ran away.
I'm willing to bet that it was a homeless person, but still I would have passed away. I would have died right then and there.
We turned around and we absolutely pegged it out of there. We like practically fell straight through the railway tracks on our way back out, and then we ran back to the campsite where Woggle was sat just roasting some marshmallows by himself, completely none the wiser to what was happening.
What's wrong with all of you?
And I think by that point, like, we'd calmed down a little bit and we decided to kind of prank him a little bit, and we started like talking up the story a little bit. We were like, bro, you don't want to go down there, which is like true, but we made it seem a lot worse than it was. Like, we made it out like, oh yeah, we saw this guy, he was down there, he had like no arms and shit, and we started like trying to spook the shit out of him because he's a very sensitive person, and so he was like, oh my god, I'm serious, and all that kind of stuff. And so we just kind of, that experience happened, and we just sort of collectively agreed never to go there or talk about it ever again. And then we had camp out, and then we went home the next day, and that was that.
I don't know whether it's because
Christ.
you're really good at telling stories, but that genuinely made like the hair on my hand like stand up a little bit.
Yes, Vox is really good at telling stories. Even if he's really good at retelling things from his life. Doesn't matter if it's comedic, like serious or whatever.
Yeah.
This is the first time I've heard you tell a scary story, and you're really good at it.
Yeah, it's
Thank
so
you.
like
Thank you.
visual.
Ladies and gents, this is the moment you've waited for.